Yeah, so we meet here once a month. In general, we do talks, workshops, and we're hoping to do a panel discussion later this year as well. So please come again, and I know a lot of you have been before. In a minute, I'm going to introduce Asim, but before I do that, I'm going to hand over to Charlie, who's going to talk about Silicon Brighton.
Thank you very much, Adam. And yeah, thank you guys all so much for coming tonight. My name is Charlie. I work with Silicon Brighton, and have we been through the agenda? This is the plan for the evening. And we are Silicon Brighton. This event is being recorded this evening with all the kit that I've been setting up here. If anybody does want to be included, any photographs or any of the video content, please come and have a chat with me at the end. Just let me know. As you say, big thank you to our host from Way East for having us here this evening. And we are Silicon Brighton. We are the host of Brighton and Hove's Tech Sector. We support over 30 different meetup groups across the city, catering for a variety of different coding languages and meetup groups for tech across the city. All of our events are free to join, available to people at all levels and hybrid, so you can join online at home, hello if you're watching, or in the room with us here tonight. And all of the videos get posted online to our YouTube channel afterwards as well. We would not be able to do what we do without the massive help of our supporters, all of whom you can see here. We owe them a huge, huge thanks. And if the company that you work for isn't on here yet, please help us out. But we're looking for help all the time. We're looking for speakers to come and talk at the events, organizers to help organize new meetup groups, and volunteers to help us run all of the events. If you have any interest in getting involved in anything that you see on the screen here, please come and have a chat with me. This is our values we like to uphold. If you feel at any point, I'll let you read through all of these in your own time. But if you feel that these aren't being upheld at any point, please just come and have a chat with me and let me know. And please follow us on socials. We're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter/X, and TikTok. And we've got a very, very busy month coming up in May. We've got events pretty much every night of the week, which is fantastic. On Thursday, we've got 2 events even on the same night. We'll be here at Runway East again to do async, and we're also hosting one of our quarterly leaders events over at Ironworks. AWS Brighton user group are meeting on Tuesday next week, PHP Sussex Wednesday next week, and Brighton Pi Thursday next week. So it's all going on at the moment. You've caught us at a very good time. We have a very fantastic, thriving Slack community where people are sharing resources. And if you're not there already, please scan the QR code to join there and stay in the conversation with us. And please also join the meetup page for Green Software Brighton so that you can stay updated when we get all of our next events posted. And our next one, I believe, is on the 19th of June here at Runway East. So thank you very much. That's everything from me. I'm going to pass back to Adam. Thanks.
So Asim is here to talk tonight. Asim is the Executive Director of the Green Software Foundation, who are building an ecosystem around green software, which means community, which is events like this evening, also standards and policy as well, and importantly, open source projects, one of which Asim is here to talk about this evening, called Impact Engine Framework. So I will hand over to Asim now.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Where are the cameras? Right, there they are. So if I hang around here, this is all right? Okay. So yeah, thank you for the introduction. This is a new presentation I've never really given before. So yeah, let's try it out on this audience. I feel like a comedian trying out new material. There's going to be a couple of jokes in here. Let's see if any of them land. What's this? My right hand? It's actually a cubit. That's the length of distance between tip of your finger and your elbow. It's an ancient kind of, well, it's maybe far more ancient than the Egyptians, but there's an ancient Egyptian unit of measurement. And it's quite interesting that there's a saying, a proverb in Ethiopia, which is send your friend with long arms to the market to get better material. So that one worked. Good. I've got my speaker notes on this one. Hang on. Where's the mouse? Can people see the mouse? There we go. Right. Okay. Yeah. So welcome. My name's Asim Hussain. I'm the executive director of the Green Software Foundation. There are perhaps a few places to find me online. I tend not to be on Twitter these days, but you can usually find me on LinkedIn. I've been looking at the intersection of sustainability and software for about 5 years now. And we launched the Green Software Foundation about 3 years ago. And we've grown significantly. We've got 60 plus member organizations now. I don't even know how many meetup groups we have all over the world. We have lots of activity in this space, which I'm very, very proud of. And it wouldn't happen if not for all the hard work of Adam and Ollie and people like that, just putting this effort in. Right, what we're going to talk about. This is going to be there'll be a little bit of open source in this. There will be a little bit of open source in this, but when we're talking, I'm trying to get a message across, which is a new message that I'm really trying to consolidate a lot of the thinking that's been happening in this space for quite a while. And it's really about measurement. It's really about measurement. And I'm going to really dive into probably a lot more detail than any of you would ever imagine that you would have in measurement. But welcome to my world. This has been me for the last couple of years. I'm going to talk about measurement. I'm going to talk about the history of measurement. I'm going to talk about this concept, which I'm not quite sure exactly how to describe it, but I think the best summary is this idea of precision. I'll try and give a demo of the tool, which we renamed to actually Impact Framework. We dropped the engine out of it. It's Impact Framework. I'll try and give a quick demo of it, which I'll see how that works. So you can see like a little bit of a flavor of what's going on there. I want to talk about power. I'm not going to talk about power as in electricity. I'm going to talk about power. The power that people and organizations and entities have over you and the asymmetry of power, and how measurement is, I believe, going to be our solution to solving a lot of these power dynamics that we have in this space. And then there's a Q&A time at the end. Measurement, what is it? Its history, why is it important? Oh, you wouldn't believe how I've dived into this. There's a lot of definitions of measurement. This is one that I find quite interesting. Technology of distance, a tool that uses shared rules to bridge disparities of culture and geography, allowing for the exchange of information. Measurement. I really love this example of measurement. It's an onomasticon of amenopet, I believe is how you pronounce it. Told you it's going to go in a bit of a weird direction. So this is a list. It's a list, ancient Egyptian. I'm not the only one who likes lists. It's a list of everything in the world. All 610 things in the entire world. It's a list of all of them. Let me get down to what it actually says on the screen right now. Hang on. Here we go. There's my speaker. This is why I need speaker notes. It says, beginning of the teaching, explaining to the heart, instructing the ignorant, to know all that exists, created by Ptah, brought into being by Thoth, the sky with all of its features, the earth and what is in it, the bend of the mountain and what is washed by the primeval waters, consisting of all that is useful, illuminated by Ra, and all that is made to grow upon the earth. And it's a list. It's a list of 610 things in order. In order. It's a list of things in order. Starts off with sky, sun. It's not a dictionary. It literally is just a list. So sky, sun, moon, star, darkness, light, shade, sunset. I just put it in there because I thought it was brilliant. It's just a list. So I love lists. I couldn't live my life without lists. You should see my Trello board. I just think it's wonderful that somebody woke up one day and said, I'm going to write everything down. It's just a list. Just write it all down. But I thought it was a great example. There's other things. Magna Carta. Oh, no, that's my screen. We've got the Magna Carta. Come on. Yeah. Magna Carta. So we're in the UK, so this makes sense. So in the signing of the Magna Carta in 1215, King John made a number of concessions to his unhappy barons. This included a promise that there would be one measure of wine throughout the whole realm, and one measure of ale, and one measure of corn. Like measurement triggered, a change, a fight against the power that's out there. We've got the French Revolution. Don't know if you know much about. One of the triggers for the French Revolution was measurement. So, and actually triggered the metric system, the creation of the metric system. So, was it King whatever, Louis VII? Yeah, he asked everybody, you seem to all be upset with me. Could you just write it all down, like everything you're upset with me? And he called a list of grievances. By each of the three estates, and the estates are the clergy, the nobility, and everybody else. Everybody else. So everybody else wrote down was basically all about measurements. All your measures are wrong. Every time I grow this corn and I use my own measurement, and every time I go to sell it to you, you tell me it's not the amount that I've grown over here. This was a massive list of grievances, and it partially triggered the French Revolution, right? And it triggered the creation of the metric system, which was described as a measurement for the people, by the people, right? Measurement. Keep on thinking through. Measurement is key to a lot of our issues. Let's dive into now. How much do you know about how much do people know here about the greenhouse gas protocol? Not much, little bits. So the greenhouse gas protocol is how corporations and a lot of organizations measure the emissions that they report. And it's got different types of measurement criteria. And there's one way you can measure using the GHG is something called market-based reporting, which was introduced in 2016. And so prior to market-based reporting, if you were a company, you just had to say how much carbon you emitted from your electricity. And then you could say, oh, but I bought, I was supposed to correct that. I didn't correct that. Then it's like how much, okay, sorry, I'm bad. I emitted this much carbon. I apologize. But, I bought all these energy offsets. So it's all, it's all right. That's what I can do. But after 2016, you can report market-based. And what does that mean? It means you don't have to admit that you emitted this carbon. You just say, oh, I only emitted this carbon. I only emitted this. That slight accounting change drove insane amounts of money towards renewable energy sector. Right? It drove a lot of money to renewable energy sector. But it's kind of like the point that I'm making. A slight change in how you measure dramatically changes where money goes, where power goes. And so, like just last week, if you're not aware of the GHG, you might be aware of this. Just last week, have you heard of Science-Based Targets Institute? Anybody here? Have you anybody heard about kind of some of the stuff going on recently? Yeah. So the term net zero has in Science-Based Targets definition of net zero has been the gold standard. We teach it in the Green Software Foundation. Our training teaches it in the Green Software Foundation. And last week, the Board of Trustees said, "Oh, you can just use offsets. It's all right. You just buy offsets. It's okay. You don't actually have to reduce emissions or eliminate emissions. You can just buy offsets." And it created a huge furor. I think the staff are all going to quit, or they've asked everybody to resign in leadership because it just came from the Board of Trustees, not actually the people who work inside the organizations have been saying that's not a possibility. Slight change in accounting and how you measure something, vast swings in where all of that power and effort and money goes, right? There's this this pattern that I'm seeing constantly. Yeah, because we talk about it. This is from our training, and we have to now change our if this goes ahead, all of our training has to now change, because we talk about this whole idea that the only way to reduce emissions is you can buy some offsets, or you can actually just not emit carbon in the first place, right? And what they've now said is, oh yeah, you can actually just buy some offsets to reduce this, right? That's the definition of that change. So thanks, 70,000 people have taken this training. So now, the 70,000 people I've been saying use SBTI. And kind of like measurement is power. Like measurement is power. Measurement, you saw like the French Revolution, Magna Carta, and there's so many examples, I had to cut so many out. Measurement is how our world has changed. It's how people without power have changed the world, have like forced people with power to kind of change and acknowledge. And it's how we will change the world. And it's honestly how I believe we'll fix sustainability. Truthfully, this is exactly where I'm coming from. You thought this was a demo of an open source tool. Oh my God. Oh God, this joke. Let me make sure I've got it right. Oh God. What's this? Woof! Woof! A dog? Does that sound? That's me barking like a dog. Wrong, actually. That is actually a peninkulma, which is an old Finnish measurement of distance, and it's how far away you can hear a dog bark. Right? How far away you can hear a dog bark. And it sounds stupid to begin with, because you're like, well, it depends where you are, right? If you're on like a flat area, you'll hear it for ages. But if you're in trees or something, you won't be far. You won't hear it, it'll be much closer to you. But really, that was the point of it, because it told you information about the terrain that you're in. It told you, okay, I'm in a flat open space. I know what's going on. Oh no, I'm in a really densely wooded forest. It gave you different information. You think this is stupid, but actually, like my journey down here was like one podcast long. Right? One podcast. A flight is like 3 movies or 1 movie, It's like we do this all the time, right? And so there's this idea of precision. And I thought it was fascinating when I found out that, if you actually look at the Latin derivation of precision, we're going into Latin now. If you go into the Latin derivation of precision, it actually comes from, it's the definition, is the act of cutting off, a piece cut off, cutting, the act of breaking off abruptly, right? Precision is basically a decision, it's a choice. It's a saying like, this is important to me, this is not important to me. It's a bias. Who's to say that using a dog bark, who decided that's stupid and you should actually use miles, right? It's just, to that person who's using that measurement, it's really useful and valid and important. But to somebody else, it's pointless, because I just need to know how far away it is in miles. Like, it's just precision. It's just deciding, what do I cut away, and for who is that worth? It just signals different bits of information. One method of measuring isn't more precise than another method. All you're saying is it just speaks to a different audience. That's all it is. It's just you're speaking to a different audience. And in the foundation, like we were really struggling, like years ago, we were like really struggling with this idea and this concept, because a lot of us were like sitting down inside organizations and just calculating this GHG computation for the organizations that we're working for. And we're realizing there's something's a little bit off here. And then somebody in a meeting once said, oh, it's just measurement for reporting and measurement for action. I think I was commenting at the fact that I was having a conversation about measurement inside a company I was working with. And I brought a lawyer along. I said, why do you need a lawyer? I just want to know why is there a lawyer? Because it's like measurement for reporting is a different construct. Measurement for reporting, I define as a measurement that you can defend. A measurement for action is a measurement that actually helps you drive down, take action. right? So it's two very subtly different things, but actually drive very different impacts from you. Yeah, and at the time we were all struggling, thinking, what is the one measurement that we have? And that broke us up because we were like, no, we need 10 types of measurement. We need 100 types, we need 1,000 types of measurement. It's all just different measures for different people and different things. So one of the things we developed in the foundation is a new type of measurement, which, so we describe kind of the GHG, which is what a lot of organizations, don't get me wrong, you need measurement for reporting, but like the GHG, and we developed something called the SCI, the software carbon intensity specification, which is kind of very different. It's completely different. It's completely defined in a very different way. But it also has these kind of like, when you think about precision, like who's it for? It's for a different audience. It does a different thing, right? So the GHG is comparable. Like you want to know, like, is Microsoft, is this, the way I remember it was in a meeting once, the way we described it is like, if this molecule of carbon in the atmosphere, who was responsible for that? Which one of you was responsible for this particular individual molecule of carbon? That's what the GHG is very much focused around. It makes it comparable. No double counting. Very clear boundaries. This last one's my opinion. It's more biased towards offsetting because just from what I've seen. SCI is very different. It's impossible. It's like everybody wants to compare. I'm like, yeah, good luck. Like it's going to be very impossible to compare SCI scores between applications. Loves double counting. And again in another meeting, and we were having a discussion about, well, the whole double counting question came up, and one person said, we should love double counting because then it's not like who's responsible for this molecule of carbon. If there's double counting, it means there's two people who are incentivized to remove it. You want as many people as possible, like incentive. It changes the narrative. GHG is about who's to blame. SCI is about who can do something, like who can actually do something to get rid of that. It's got fuzzy boundaries. It's harder to calculate, and but the way it's defined, it's very biased towards elimination, towards actually like not emitting carbon in the first place. It actually has very strong clauses inside it that you can't reduce your SCI score through purchasing of any kind of market-based instruments, any offsets, any renewable energy, anything. You've just actually got to engineer a better solution. So yes, so one measurement is just not better than another measurement. Different measures speak to different audiences and drive different actions. So that's kind of like an important kind of important lesson for me, and I'm trying to get that message across. Demo, maybe. Let me just drive through a couple of slides with this one. So, because I have to explain a bunch of concepts, because what we built in the foundation, we built the SCI. It was a specification, it's just an equation on the screen. And everybody's like, well, this is really hard to calculate. It's just an equation. How do we actually calculate it? So then the teams start getting together and go, well, we need actually tooling to help us calculate this better. A lot of conversations later, the impact framework came into being, and there's actually quite a lot of organizations involved in this. And so what impact framework does, now we're getting into the nitty-gritty, it takes things you can observe about the world, like how much utilization my CPU is using, how many page views on a website, how many times did you install something. It takes things you can observe and it converts them into impacts like, well, it used to be just carbon, but now we've got carbon, water. Someone wrote a death plugin, which I love. Yeah, death. How many people are going to die because of your choices? Or displacement. How many people are going to be displaced from where they live because of your choices? So any kind of environmental impact can be generated, and it does that really through this concept of a pipeline of plugins. Because we've gone through so many names. Let's stick with plugins. So basically, you take this observation, say your CPU utilization is 50%, and you really want to calculate carbon. What do? You select a set of plugins which you put in a pipeline, and it kind of takes that pumps it to this, whatever that outputs, it pumps it to this, wherever that outputs, it pumps to this, and out the other end comes carbon. And each of these plugins kind of does a little bit of the story to help take your utilization to carbon. And we want like when we had a hackathon recently, which just finished like a week or two ago. Before that, we had like 6 plugins, and now we've got like 40 plugins. And so our goal really is just basically a universe of plugins out there where you could just take whatever you're computing. You're in the cloud, you're doing a website, you're doing a mobile application, whatever. You just select the plugins that you want that just compute, take whatever you can observe about your system, whatever system that you have, and convert it into whatever impacts you want to measure, be it water, waste, whatever you want. And yeah, through that pipeline, you just select it, you put them all together, and it comes out the other end as again, whatever you want it to be. Whatever environmental impact you want it to measure, it can measure, as long as those plugins exist, and more plugins are being made all the time now. The main thing about it is everything stored in a manifest file, a single file, not a directory of stuff, one file. You store all of your observations, all of your plugins, all of the coefficients, everything you want, you stick it in one file. You don't send somebody, my carbon emissions was X. You send somebody your entire manifest file, everything, all your inputs, all your observations, everything. This is about full transparency about all of your emissions. Where are my notes here? Hang on. Because we really believe in kind of verify, don't trust. I'm so tired of being sent, PDF files of somebody's emissions, and I have to like figure out like, oh God, what heading is this? Okay, what did you use? I don't really know what you used. I'm so tired of this. Send me a manifest file. I can quickly look in what's going on. I can challenge you. I can say, well, I don't like that plugin that you use. That's not the one I would use. I don't like your coefficient. That's too low. I actually think that in your situation, that coefficient's something else. We describe it as an executable audit. You're not sending somebody a PDF. You're sending somebody a file that they can edit. They can say, actually, I believe these are your emissions. Rerun it and send it back to you. Full transparency. And yeah, so you can say like, I don't agree with your inputs. I'm going to put my own inputs in and tell you what your emissions are. Why are you telling me what your emissions are? Why can't I tell you what your emissions are? Why are we waiting? Why are we waiting for people to tell us what their emissions are? And you can see if people agree with you or they don't. That's fine. I say if you're fully transparent, you can't be accused of greenwashing. You can only be accused of being wrong. That's it, right? And what we say is like, if you can observe something with the impact framework, you can measure the impacts of something. You don't always have access to everything. We're always using kind of third-party services, this and that and the other. If you can observe something from that, you can measure the impact of it. Right, if you want to go to the website with the tooling and videos and documentation, it's if.greensoftware.org, and that'll take you there. And let's see if this demo is going to work. I'm not how I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a quite an awkward demo. I think I have to, I think I have to somehow try and get this VS Code screen on that window over there. Oh, come on. Go on.
Let me just try this.
Oh, yeah, because I'm sharing it. Yeah, I'm sharing a screen, aren't I?
There you go.
Yep, there we go. Right, I've got some VS Code, but I've got to somehow you are open source, so there's a YAML file. So there you go. So this is basically what a manifest file effectively looks like. You have a bunch of stuff. These are all the plugins I'm going to use to compute some impacts. This manifest file is something that computes the impact of 4 servers that are running in the cloud. Server 1, server 2, server 3, server 4. But you could do whatever you want, whatever structure you want. We've got one organization that's measuring their entire every single server they have in their entire company. It's a 13 megabyte YAML file, which once it's computed is a 40 megabyte YAML file. But they do it, they manage to measure all of it. And this is what I can observe. So what you have is you have this thing called an observation, which is just something that you can observe about anything in the world for a particular time and for a particular duration. So this is just a server, and I can see this server is 10% utilized at that time for a 5-minute period of time. And then 5 minutes later, it's 61% utilized, and 90 minutes later, it's 90% utilized. That's all I know. If you're in the cloud, that's all you know. But you need to turn that into Carbon. So how do I turn that into Carbon? I use a series of plugins. And these are plugins that have been built by us or by community members. So all that happens, and it's quite simple, really. You take this observation. What the Imperfirming does, it takes this observation, it passes it to this one. And whatever that outputs, it passes it to this one. And whatever that outputs, it passes it to this one. And again, and again, and again, until this final one has got all the information it needs to pump out Carbon. And that whole process, this process of taking an observation and turning it into an impact, we call induction. It's like deduction. It comes from Aristotle. It's called induction. Or you induce an observation into an impact. That's the process that we're describing here. You're taking something you can observe and you're creating an impact. It's induction. So the actual script. Hopefully that works. This is an old version of it. I didn't want to risk updating it to the latest one just before this demo. And it's got all these errors which have gone. All these errors have gone in the latest version. Oh, it's just warnings. You can ignore them anyway. It's just warnings, right? Yeah, that's what I normally do. So what that's generated is it's generated. Oh, well, you can trust me. It generated this. Let's not risk it. It's already open on the screen. And what this is, you can see, it's the same file mostly, but it's before we just had inputs. Now we've got outputs. So you probably would recognize. Oh, we've got a little bit of a floating point issue here, but anyway. So we've now outputted just a whole bunch of other information that those plugins basically output, and each plugin kind of does its own little bit to kind of like, well, you probably need this to calculate energy, so I'll give you that. And it goes all the way down to all this other energy. Then finally, that Teeds curve plugin calculated energy. Then that what time plugin gave you grid carbon intensity, which is how clean or dirty the electricity is. So you multiply this by this, and that's how you get carbon. So then you know for this 1 5-minute period of time, that was the emissions for this one server, and it's computed all of them like that. It can be quite hard to kind of like really see what's going on. So it also actually, hopefully, outputs. Yeah, here we go. We can output as a bit of a CSV. Have I got edit CSV at the end? Yeah. So you can see here, like this whole system was 533 grams of carbon. I can see this particular server for its entire everything was for the entire time period was 112, 114, 103. But we can also see it broken out by time. So I can see actually at whatever time, it was 9. And so you can see spikes like over time, like what time. Every time I get this total number, I'm like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, where did that come from? What drove that? Or which server, which machine, which region, which data center? Was it the front end or was it the back end? I don't know. Like you need to break everything down into a really, really, really granular level so you can actually know where the issue is and where you can take action, but also temporarily. Like over time, emissions change. Your server goes up and down, the electricity gets cleaner or dirtier. Like you need to know this information so you can actually make intelligent decisions about where to put in effort, what should I be doing. And this is just carbon. As I said before, imagine this is death. At what time is your application most murderous? Right? Maybe you want to do something about that. You know, like you can do all sorts of environmental impacts as long as there's a plugin. As long as somebody goes in, and these plugins can be quite simple. They can be simple coefficients. They can be more complicated. The death one is actually just, they took a lot of scientific evidence from various papers, coalesced it together to a set of coefficients, and then pushed it out. There's some really good work now on water, which I'm really, one of my things I've been really wanting to do this year is start moving the conversation beyond carbon, like getting to other environmental impacts. Water is something that comes up, or had historically come up a lot until recently. But yeah, water's now on the table. And there's been some really great conversation about how actually to compute water. What does it include? Should you include it from the data center? Should you include it beyond? Things like that. And I haven't even gone through all of them. There's a whole bunch of different plugins that have been created and will continue to be created. And they all work with each other, or they can be made to work with each other. So you've got pipelines that compute certain things, certain impacts for certain situations. So the future is going to be like, people are going to be generating certain pipelines that, well, this is a great pipeline if you're in the cloud industry running on AWS and you want to compute water. Oh, this is a great pipeline if you want to compute websites with water impact of websites, things like that. It's all about pipelines, and people are starting to publish them now. I think that's it from the demo. I won't risk going any further into it because it's a bit challenging, and I'm one-handed and everything. But ultimately, that's basically what it's all about. And most importantly, what I love about it is it's, where's that computed? You're not sending somebody what your total carbon emissions are. I want people to sending people this file. This file. We're even having some early conversations with Ethereum Foundation about, are there ways of actually hashing this so you can actually say for certain, well, this is my emissions at this time. Having third-party auditors then basically go, like a decentralized network of people who actually verify that this is your emissions and can actually confirm it. So why does your verification have to happen through larger entities? Why can't we do it? All right, let's get back to the talk. Okay. Swipe up, right? Right, okay, here we go. Right, yeah. Whee. I was on a Mac for ages in my last job. Maybe use a Windows machine. And now I'm coming back into the fold again. Oh yeah, so if you did want to like have a much better whole run through of this whole training exercise, you can go there. I've got a video, and I've even got the code that you can click on and copy and paste and things like that. So give people a second to take a picture of that while it's starting. Have a little zip of this. All right, awesome. Power. Oh, it's gonna get weird again. All right, power. The asymmetry of power and how measurement is power. Like, how do you define power? So I like this definition, which the power is the ability to influence people and events. Influence people and events. It's going to be such an awkward. Hang on. Let me get back to my notes here. Oh yeah, there's some good slides coming up. Yeah, look, I personally don't. I used to be left my entire life, massive Labour supporter all the way through. I don't believe in left and right anymore. I don't even acknowledge that that's true. I believe in one thing, which is it's powerful versus the powerless. That's the real dynamic, right? That's the real dynamic. I couldn't tell you who, I could very clearly tell you who's more powerful and less powerful than me. I couldn't very well tell you who's more left or right than me. If you actually, oh, for God's sakes. So I call it the spectrum of power. And I say there's forces that are at play that kind of concentrate power into as few hands as possible. And there's forces at play that actually dilute power into as many hands as possible. If you look at some aspects of the world, like democracy, could you imagine being in Greece, just waking up one day and going, oh, Gary, got an idea. I'm going to call it voting, right? Don't be crazy, Gary. You know, democracy is like, it's a tool to dilute power, right? Think of the internet. What is the internet? Knowledge is like control, like it's the way of like diluting power. Think of open source. Think of just the concept of open source. It diluted power, right? Before that, it was just closed source. You didn't know what, you're completely beholden, and suddenly we can all do whatever we want. It's a dilution of power, right? Fucking hell, this is going to get hard because all my notes are on this one. Internet, open source. Yeah, and power isn't good or bad. It's what you do with power that's good or bad, right? But I think generally, I'm always on the side of having as much dilution of power as possible, because then you've got fewer people who can do bad things. And I trust the way the foundation works through consensus. It was very hard for me to get around at the start, like just having a whole bunch of people around a table and just trusting the fact that if you get enough of the right people around a table, you will actually get to the right answer. And I come from that command and control environment from corporations. And I was like, no. But it really works. It's really, truly, truly works. But how do we dilute power? And it's a way of I look at it. So there's a lot of stuff in sustainability these days. I'm like, how do I feel about that? That feels a bit, wait a second. It says all the right words, but it feels a bit odd. And the rubric I ask myself, is this a solution that concentrates power or dilutes power? I actually think of sustainability. What is sustainability if not the concentration of power in too few? Aren't we doing anything about it? That's what I think of when I think of sustainability. Like, what is it? 80% of the emissions come from 70 companies in the world, right? It's a concentration of power. Why do people feel the only power they can deploy is that of civil disobedience? I'm part of these people. But why do people feel the only power they can deploy is that of civil disobedience? It's because you feel powerless. And you feel that is the only power you can employ, but we have something we can use. Can you guess what it is? Measurement. I had to put a June reference in. Why did I put this slide in? Wait, hang on. Have you got my speaker notes there? Frickin' hell. Right, if your power can be taken away from you, like you don't have that power. Like I always think everybody's talking about AI is like democratizing everything that we can do, but it's also just, it can be taken away from you in an instant, right? So is it really your power? If something can be taken away from you, is it really your power to have? I've covered this. Open source is a dilution of power. You can't take it away from you. The number of conversations, I just found it hilarious. I've been in enterprise organizations, and I'm always like with leadership, and they're always like, oh, there's always like some open source solution which is annoying some executive, and like I come on a call with them, and they're like, well, just can we just, and I have to explain to them, there's nothing you can do. There's literally you can't shut it down. Someone's going to fork it, and then there's nothing you can do. And it's a beautiful experience, because it's like you realize just how powerless they are and how powerful people are, right? And I always give them advice. And the only way you can compete with open source is to give people something better. That's the only way you can compete with open source. If someone's using something and you don't like that they're using something, you've just got to give them something better to use. You've got to be more transparent with what you're doing, with what you're building, with what you're releasing. You build a better product. That's the only way. And so that's really what we're trying to do with Impact Framework. I'm going to try and connect the dots here a little bit. Why is the measurement power not in our hands, right? And what can we do to put it in our hands? So this is why this whole idea of you taking an observation, that you can observe whatever you want. You can observe things that you own, and you can observe things you don't own, that other people own. You can take that observation and through a manifest file, through a series of plugins, turn them into an impact. If you can observe a thing, you can measure a thing. Publish it. Publish that manifest file on a GitHub repo. And if someone doesn't like it, they can't get rid of it. They can just give you something better. They can just be more transparent. They can correct it, right? And this is the thing. This impact framework is it's not it is, yes, it's a measurement tool, right? I get really scared. People think of that manifest file as like some sort of configuration file for a tool. It's not. It is an executable audit of emissions that you can make fully transparent and put out there. It is a technology that dilutes power, right? It's a technology that dilutes power. If you can observe a thing, you can measure a thing. You can observe any things you own, and you can observe things you don't own. Release your manifest files in the open. The only way to challenge your numbers is to be more transparent than you are. I call people who write manifest files watchers, because we observe things and then we watch and then we turn those observations into impacts. And my dream is that there's a world of like tens of thousands of watchers all out there in the world, just constantly measuring everything and not even having an opinion. Just like, this is it. This is the manifest file for you. What is the manifest file for this laptop? Why do I have to read another PDF LCA? Why can't I just see the manifest file for this laptop and see what you picked and say, I don't agree with that. That's a bit different. I'm going to release my fork of Apple's LCA manifest file, and I'm going to say what the emissions are. I'm going to say what the death is, right? Exactly. Yeah. Coming up to the end. This is the last thing, I think. Yeah. So this is another just quote that I thought was quite interesting. Units of measurement are for the powerful, sly tools of subjugation. Each time they're deployed, they turn the world into a place that continues to make sense as long as the power that legitimizes the measurement rests in place. Right? And that's it. Questions, if there's any. All right, there we go.
Would anybody like to get us started with a question?
Thanks for that. So it sounded like you were potentially going to be challenging people on the way they were measuring things. And was that to question the accuracy of their outputs of their measurements? There seems to be quite a big kind of drive around that.
Not on. Is this on? Oh, it's on. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you can, I suppose. Whenever I get like a report of something that's been measured, whenever you see something's measured, there's been 10,000 assumptions that have been made through that measurement. And so you then need to like challenge some of the assumptions that have been made in them, and you can challenge them. But oftentimes it's really hard when you're reading these kind of like thick documents to see like what assumption did you make. If you put it all in a very transparent way where you can say like, well, I can see there's a coefficient there that I don't like. Like for instance, oftentimes there's a lot of questions around like how clean or dirty, what choice do you make for how clean or dirty electricity is? Put it in there. Did you include renewables? How did you include renewables? What did you choose? How did you choose the values for that? You can put it all in there in that file. So then I can see what all the assumptions that you made, and I can challenge them. Right? Oftentimes, one of the questions we can get so deep. The embodied carbon of physical infrastructure is like a really interesting topic, because once you dive and scratch the surface, you're like, oh my God, there's almost no guidance. And that's when the lawyers come along and go, well, I think we can say this. So like, there's a lot of like that, if that was fully transparent, you could say, well, actually, that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I don't like that choice that you made. I don't agree with the quality. You've included offsets. What was the quality of the offsets? Can I see? No, you can't use those kind of offsets for how I like to measure. So that's kind of like some of the ways you can challenge it.
So there's a range of metrics that they can choose from.
Yeah.
And you can challenge which ones they've chosen, essentially. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Oh, is that the answer you're looking for? I went off.
Maybe. Sure, thank
you.
Yeah. It was a really fascinating talk. I'm really interested in the mechanics of the manifest file that you described and the fact that it can be rerun.
Yes.
I think if I understood that correctly. Yeah. So obviously your plugins, it sounded like they're doing quite a lot of the maths.
All of it.
All of the maths.
Yeah.
So I guess then the plugins are really important for generating the output. Yeah. And if they're changing over time, if they're being revised, if there's new versions of them, then the maths inside them is going to change. So you run them at point A, your numbers are going to be something. If you run them 6 months later, the numbers are going to be something else.
Yeah.
How do you, I guess that's where you talk a lot about power and measurement and the accuracy resides within those, and decisions are made about how you take these observations and turn them into numbers. And if those plugins are in a fluid state, then what you get from the manifest is going to change. And so from a kind of auditing perspective, someone could run it later and go, well, my numbers don't match your numbers. So I just wonder,
but why didn't they match?
Well, why don't they match?
Yeah, why don't they match?
So I guess like, how do you manage that? How do you legislate for that? How do you explain, look, I know you're going to run it and you're getting different numbers. That's because these plugins are different than they were when I ran them. I guess that's an interesting.
One of the things, it's not in this one, but it's actually not, it's literally being built right now. So when you run a manifest file, it's kind of an execution node, which have details of the environment that you ran in, which includes the versions of all the plugins. So you can then at least see this manifest file, this version changed of a plugin. But also you'll see things like maybe you run it on a different operating system or something like that. So yeah, we're trying to like capture information which is pertinent to the actual running and execution, because there's other issues as well. That's actually not the one I'm too worried about. The bit I'm more worried about is when plugins call APIs and there's dynamic data and something like that, and maybe the data they're pulling in kind of changes, and that's kind of a question. I think there's going to be types of manifest files which are written, which are more, I just want to know my compute what my emissions are. And there's going to be types of manifest files which are like, do you know what? This is something I'm going to I want to get audited, whatever that really means. And for that, I'm going to pick these plugins because I know they're quite very well used. They're very stable. They might not give me the information I need, in as much granularity, but I know they're going to be stable, so I'll pick them. There may be a future where I think there'd be a wonderful if there was like a plugins. I mean, everything we've done is open source, but plugins don't have to be open source. There could be organizations out there that actually verify, and you can really trust and say, I'm going to build, this is the pipeline. We've had tons of researchers, and this is how we compute it. So there could be something like that. We're starting just literally, I've had an email. We're starting some conversations with some organizations that do auditing for large companies, and start saying, well, if you were given a manifest file, what would you need to see in it for you to be willing to say, as an organization, we're willing to be sued if we get this wrong? So there's a lot of those questions. It's a great question, but yeah, we're just starting to figure out those answers. But yeah.
Hi, that was amazing. So interesting.
Everything's
going off in my
couple of
brain like this. I was just interested in the origins of the coefficients. How have they been devised? Where have they come from?
So the coefficients are all if there are coefficients, they're in various plugins that people have used. Oftentimes, one of the things that we ask, and that we will be asking, we asked in the hackathon, but we will be asking because there's a registry being built, is to provide evidence. Like if you're going to be providing this, provide some evidence as to where these numbers came from, literature, citations, things like that to kind of justify the numbers. If there's plugins that kind of somehow estimate, one of the things we did that very early on that was really fascinating, actually, it blew my mind, was there's a couple of different kind of, what's the word it's dropping me, models out there to measure emissions of software. There's Cloud Carbon Footprint, there's Boa Vista, there's, actually I was at Intel at the time, so there's the Intel internal kind of models, and there was one other I can't remember. Anyway, so we were going to test Impact Framework itself by like, well, we'll just run the same data through all these things and we'll just double check everything's fine. They were all different, like by wide margins, by significant margins. And then you dive into how these models work and you realize, oh my God, you've got a completely different methodology. No one's aware of it. Everyone thinks these things are equivalent. Boa Vista, it turns out, uses primary energy. So it doesn't tell you the energy, it tells you the energy from the coal that was burnt rather than at the data center. CCF was fascinating because it turns out if you give it a CPU, which it doesn't know about, it just goes, I'll use the average of the entire world. And you're like, oh, okay, that's a great choice. I won't tell you what Intel said because I probably have an NDA still there. But Intel gave another number. So it's kind of like, so people are like, well, what's the right number to choose? Like, which was the right coefficient? And I'm like, I don't know. And also, you don't know, right? You're just telling me the right thing to do is just to have all this stuff and just pump the same observations through multiple things and see how it differs. Because as we go down to precision, it's just maybe some of these things just prefer different use cases than other use cases. And actually, it's not a wrong coefficient. It's just if you're doing reporting, it's good for you. If you're trying to like actually drive down actions and understand where, specifically is this coefficient's good for you. So yeah, that's kind of, I suppose that's one of the messages I want to get across is like this hunt for this magical golden model with all the correct coefficients is just, it's a fantasy. It doesn't exist. I think there's just going to be hundreds of models and a lot of people arguing constantly as to which is the right one. But at least if it's transparent, you can have a decent argument about it. That's really, I suppose, what we want to get to is just make this whole thing transparent so you can really understand what's going on and have that debate. Yeah.
Yeah, hi. I just wondered, what advice do you have for anyone that's trying to get their company to spend some more time looking at this kind of stuff and trying to reduce their emissions?
Yeah. My general, well, it depends on the kind of company, right? My general advice in generally sustainability is you've kind of just got to get leadership to publicly commit to something if your organization hasn't committed. And I would strongly, even if you feel inclined to do other things, I would strongly like try and go in that direction. I've had people like coach to kind of have just reach out to the board, like do like something just to really like get that public commitment. Once you got that kind of public commitment, it kind of gives permission, I find, to internally inside. You almost don't have to say anything because you just, why are you doing that? Well, the CEO, right, just posted it. So you just like, you've got to get that public commitment first. But then I would always say, like, you have to start measuring. Just honestly, just try measuring something from within your organization using the impact framework. I had like one of the use cases for this that people are talking about is when you're bidding for work. It was like, I was talking to the organization that would have paid for the work. So when we're going to bid for this work, and it was a very large, like multi-billion-dollar, when we bid for this work, as well as the price and the cost, send us the manifest file. Like send us like what it is. What is the emissions? You're going to do this thing. Tell us what is the emissions profile of what it's going to do. Just start measuring. And my strong belief, the problem we have right now is the measures that we have that do like corporate emissions reporting. There's a big break between that and the things that people at the coalface, for a very bad analogy, can actually do. Whereas with the manifest files, there's like a direct connection. So you just send to a manifest file and you can just go, oh yeah, server 39C on 4 p.m. killed a lot of people. Maybe we should do something. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to get down to that level. So if you can get down to really granular level measurement, the problem with granular level measurement, it sucks for any type of regulatory reporting. It just does not work. Oftentimes, like if you're a large organization and you're trying to get your emissions number, this is like measurement for reporting. If you're trying to get your emissions numbers audited, and you say to an auditor, like, oh, they go like, how much energy did you use? And you go, well, I installed this app on every single machine and it told me this much. And they're like, we're not going to trust some app. How much did you pay for energy? What was your energy bill? Right, that's the only thing I trust, is how much did you pay for your electricity? Like, that is what I trust. And so then, like, I'm supposed to take an energy bill of like $10 million and trying to figure out which process on which server. It's like that link is broken, right? But so there's this kind of like, that's why measurement for reporting doesn't really work for action, and measuring for action doesn't really work for reporting. So you kind of need both. So I'd start off with measurement with an impact framework. Yeah.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions yet?
Can I just read one from online quickly?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you very much. Jacqueline would like to know, how can I get the impact framework tool to use it? I'm trying to measure the website that I'm doing in normal programming with the one I will do with green coding.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Well, if you go to, was it Jacqueline? Jacqueline. Hi, Jacqueline. If you go to if.greensoftware.org, you'll find that's the impact framework like documentation, and you'll find like all the docs in there about how to do that. I'd also recommend all of these links actually. So go to that's the actual main documentation. The IF actually is .foundation.org. It's the same thing. The second link from the bottom is the training that I would basically watch the training, and you'll see how to use impact framework. This next one, if you just want to get involved with more of the community and things like that, so you go to IF What's Next, there's actually a link to join like a public group. But if you go on the IF repository and if you've got any questions, you can just post a question into the issues or discussion. And another link, I don't know, it's hard for me to tell you, but if you go into the Green Software Foundation GitHub organization and look for a repository called Hack, just Hack, that's what we use for the hackathon. And people from Mozilla actually built like some really cool tooling. I think the project, yeah, I think the hackathon, so we haven't actually gone through the hackathon and kind of like got all the plugins yet and put them into a nice place. You kind of have to mess around a little bit. If you go, there's a plugin called Website Carbonara, might be the name of the plugin. And I think they do specifically that, so you can put like a URL in it, measures it. And there's also a plugin thing called Mozilla Earth. So if you go there, as a Mozilla team basically did a whole bunch of work around. There's a nice video. So there's a couple of places you can go to do that. And let us know what you did, because that's a really interesting experiment.
Okay. Yep. Many thanks, Asim. I really appreciated it, especially how, you're not just thinking about techniques for doing better measurement. You're thinking about the situations and purposes for which you're measuring. So reflecting on what measurement is.
Yeah.
And what I hadn't got before, like measuring for reporting, measuring for action, measuring for challenging power, measuring for mobilizing people. So you said like, if we can observe something, you can measure it. But the way you were talking about measurements is like measurements more about a relationship than the characteristic of the thing in and of itself, so to speak. It's about, like how you and I could finally, after loads and loads of manifest arguing, agree. Okay, that's the suitable way for you and I to measure something in a way that we both understand, because our relationship with that thing and with one another has been, we know what that's all about now. Whereas the arguments you might have in another setting, working with a corporate partner,
you land on a different.
So I don't know where this is going. It's just a kind of observation. That thinking. I wonder where you end up with in thinking of measurement as about relationship, and how do we build that relationship? And I think where that might be interesting is also when you talked about power, which is a really slippery. There's all sorts of different kind of theories of power, but you're almost talking about that as something some people have, others don't. And whatever this power thing is, we redistribute it. And there's a lot to be said for that. But power is also a relationship between groups. And you're thinking about how do you shift that relationship
between
people, or it's a relationship between entities in the world. And what makes someone appear powerful is because they're working in an organization that has an important relationship with other bits of the economy or whatever. So as other people have commented, you really made us think. And I think Asim, it's about, if you think about power as a relation and measurement as a relationship building or validating.
Maybe this is the language of
then maybe
speaking.
it might help you kind of with your deliberations a little bit. So
no, that's an interesting way of looking at it, because like like you could just have instead of like talking with words and English and PDF files and everything else, let's talk in this much more clearer language where we can have a much more clean conversation about just what we think is important for us, precision, like what's important to you, what do you want to cut away, what do I want to cut away. And maybe this is just a simpler way of just having that conversation rather than just, shouting at each other and not agreeing. And there's it's an interesting point. There'll be another joke here somewhere about relationships.
Hey, Asim. I wonder what examples and case studies or whatever, or ideas maybe on what you've got around actually taking the measurements that you've made and actually making genuine reductions, because that's what the focus is, right? Like, yes, the measurement's great. We've been doing a low carbon audit for a client fairly recently. And people wanted to keep pushing and keep going with the measurement. And I said, well, there's literally no point, because we've got so many recommendations now for how we can reduce. Spending X amount more time doing yet more measurement isn't going to get us to any more recommendations for action to make genuine reductions. Like, the reduction is the important thing. So what are you seeing people doing with that CSV file, or more generally the YAML file? Is it like data visualization they're sticking it into, or like what are people doing to get to the point where they're making reductions and quantifying the reductions?
So we haven't got too far. The one example I would have for you is actually what one organization, that organization is Amadeus. It's like actually a travel organization, if you know them. So one of the things that they've done, which I thought was really interesting, is they actually started measuring their entire infrastructure using Impact Framework, and that 13 megabyte file, every 5 minutes, it kind of measures all of the emissions at that granular level. So you've got like temporal, you've got, as lowest as you can. And they ran an internal hackathon recently, and went through it, and every one of the solutions then had to evidence the emissions reductions that they would get as measured by Impact Framework. So kind of like it drives, from that perspective, it kind of can drive like quite significant, so interesting what the solutions that people came up with, and the scale of the results and the investment and all of those things. So that's kind of one, I think, most concrete example of how like you can drive it. But there's not like been that many, like we're still like an incubation project. So we have a big disclaimer. If you go on it at the top, it says, please do not use this in production. Like we don't, it's not a graduated project yet. So one of the things that we want to really, now that the hackathon's finished, now that kind of it's got a lot more maturity to it, is getting it to the point where we are having like a lot more concrete use cases of actual, case studies where organizations have used it, they've applied it, they've then said, this is my emissions at the start, I've baselined it, I've just done something like Jacqueline's about to do right now, and this is my new emissions profile, I've evidenced it, it's not just something, I made up, here's the manifest file, you can check it, you can confirm it. So we're not quite there, I'd say, at that point. The best example is Amadeus in terms of like adoption of Impact Framework and how they're using it internally. But I also think it's fascinating, because I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like, it's just a rabbit. Like, when people start getting into measurement, trying to pull them out of that hole is so hard, because you just start getting into the decimal point, and you're like, well, wait a second, can you just start focusing on reduction right now? Because you're all right. And there's a really great, I'll find it actually, I'll send you, there's a really good paper from, it was from Google. It was in Hot Carbon 2 years ago. And he was arguing that he actually put like a numerical value to where, do you know what I'm talking about? No. Is he put a numerical value to the point where measurement past this point has no value because it's impossible to measure reductions at that scale beyond this point. So there's a really interesting, paper for that. Anyway, we're finishing, are we?
Are there any more questions? Oh, yeah. I welcome your work and your approach. I work in economics, and there's an enormous problem in economics with measurement. There was a recent paper that came out that was just one side of A4, which proved unequivocally that every measurement in economics across the globe is a fantasy. And it's absolutely true. And it's very simple to prove that it's such. So I'm sort of sensing this dovetail between measurement in economics and your styles and approaches to measurement. And it's very hard. When I finish my work and with some other people, I think we know where to go to get the practical tools to do the job that we will sort out. So thanks again for your
thank you. We do hope, like, because it's being used in software, but like maybe the penny will drop at some point that you can use this for anything. It's just a manifest file of a measurement. You got another question?
Overstaying my welcome. Okay. Organizations like Cloud Carbon Footprint, and you mentioned Berwitzer, What Time, Electricity Maps, Greenware Foundation, like DIMPACT have done some good work.
DIMPACT,
folks. Like, how are you trying to be the place where all of those types of models and calculation methodologies come to? Because there's so many different it used to be the point where we were scrabbling around. It was right. It was one paper. But now there's loads, and there's those different models. Are you sort of actively reaching out to those types of organizations to try to bring them in, to get them into Impact Framework?
I mean, I've had conversations. I mean, I haven't honestly followed up with some of this stuff. I just started out and I got very, very busy. So now I'm going on a break now, and I'll follow up. But so again, I laughed at CCF early on, and then I realized it's recorded. It's brilliant. I love CCF. I'm not joking. I'm not like just, it's absolutely amazing work. And the people that built CCF are people I know. And it really kind of like helps significantly. It's just, CCF is actually just, the challenge of CCF is it's just a bit dated, and the tech world moves so fast. So that's why it's got a bit of a gap there. It's just about transparency. That's all I really want to do is like there's all these different approaches now, and there's more and more and more approaches coming along. What's the difference between them all? Can we build them in a certain, because I always say like all these different models is like, this is a USB-C, another one is like a USB, is this a C? What's the big one called? A. Another one's a USB-A, another one's a serial port. Another one's you've got to get some soldering wires and just like solder them together. So all these different models have all these, like, it's really hard to like just connect with them and figure out what they're doing. If they all just have the same, those plugins is just simple. It's an interface, a function interface. And as long as you have that functional interface, you will plug in to the infrastructure. Then you can do that kind of comparison across the board. My dream is that like if someone writes like an academic paper in the future, or many academic papers, and you read these academic papers, you go, oh, that's great. Oh, brilliant. How do write a plugin. Say like, this is the plugin. If you want to try out this theory about measurement, or this coefficients, or this e-waste, whatever, just here's the plugin, plug it in, see what it looks like. It's a very simple way of going. I just want transparency and openness. And I kind of trust that the solution's somewhere in there. As you might have guessed. Is that it? Is there another one?
No, I think that's it.
Is that it?
I think so.
I've got one more
yes.
measurement thing.
You've got a question for yourself.
Got a question for yourself. Okay, go. What's this?
Roughly, yeah.
This is a fathom distance between outstretched arms, and also perhaps the start of a clap.
That's got to be the best way I've seen a talk end. That was incredible. Just want to say a big thanks again to Asim for coming down and talking to us about this, and obviously a big thanks to the Green Software Foundation as well, and Runway East, and the wonderful people at Silicon Brighton for helping us put this event on. Without you guys, we'd be lost. So I think the next event might be on the next slide. If you can. There it is. So there we go, in June. Wednesday the 19th of June. And it's fittingly a workshop on exploring the measurement landscape. So we've seen a kind of hint of what that might be about in June. So we're all going to head down to the pub now. We're going to go just round the corner and down the hill a little way to a place called Unbarred. There's a table there, or a couple of tables there booked for us. So come down there, have some drinks. Hopefully Asim will stick around. Maybe not. No, it's okay. You got to run. But yeah, hopefully we'll see you all there. And yeah, great. See you at the next one.